That suggestion, Carol.
That's the only problem we have.
That's fine.
God bless you.
Yeah.
And a little bit of differentiation in administration, right? This is
Good, right? But the other one's still going.
well, this is still typical. So, trying to get into those schools with this one, then they would just withdraw.
Yes.
That was the last
Good afternoon and welcome to the February 8th, 2023 VAR Large Meeting here in the Lenny Krawcheck Room at 2 George Street. My name is John Robinson. I'm the chairman of VAR Large, and I will be the chairman for this evening's presentations. Other board members present with me this evening are Luda Sobchuk, James Metters, Seton Brown, and Carol Wheeler, who is sitting in as an alternate for Mr. Jay White. City staff present are Tora Parrish and Lawrence Courtney. This is a summary of, for those who may not be familiar with it, of how our proceedings are conducted. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of this meeting. Staff control the slide presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with our submittal requirements. The applicant simply needs to ask staff to advance to whichever slide they want to go to during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston Public Meeting Channel on the YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting for each application will be as follows. There will first be an introduction and overview of the project by city staff for the benefit of the board and the public. This is followed by the applicant's presentation, which has a 10-minute time limit unless extended by the chair. This is followed by any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. People affiliated with the project or the presentation, be they the owners, developers, designers, consultants, or architects, should speak during this portion of the meeting. The application presentation is followed by public comment. All applications are part of a public meeting format. Written public comments are accepted by this board, but in order for them to have been considered by us, they have to have been submitted by noon yesterday. And the written comments that we received have been transmitted to all board members. They will not be read into the record unless the chair deems it necessary or a member asks the chair to have it read into the record. This is followed by public comments from those of you who are here with us this evening. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person is requested again to state their name and address when they begin their presentation. You're respectfully reminded that there's a 2-minute time limit for members of the public unless extended by the chair. The applicant does not respond to public comments after the public comment portion. The public comment period is followed by city staff comments and recommendations. The applicant is then given a response or clarification period either to the public comments and or to the city staff comments and recommendations. The response time has a 5-minute limit. The applicant does not have to use it. This is followed by a board discussion and vote. The application presentation is over. Public comment is closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising their hand and waiting to be called upon. After this, if a vote on an agenda item is taken, board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for a vote on a motion. The chair shall reread a written motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if I had misread it, which occasionally happens. Once a motion is in proper order and seconded, each member, when voting, should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. The results of all of our actions tonight are posted on the city website at charleston-sc.gov/BAR. As a note for the public, item number 3, the Earhart and B Street project has been deferred until at least our February 22nd meeting. This is a friendly reminder to those members of the public with us. Please turn off cell phones and other disruptive devices. This is also a procedural reminder, particularly for applicants and for members of the public, which is that comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, and lot coverage, as well as livability concerns, are not the purview of this board and therefore should not be voiced here. With those remarks having been stated, we'll proceed to agenda item number 1, which is the approval of our meeting minutes from January 25th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Motion. Second. Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Minutes are approved. At this time, unless the board objects, I would like to entertain, as you've heard, agenda item number 3 has been removed. Unless a board member objects, I would like to take the agenda out of order and hear item number 4, Iron Forge Alley, lots 13 and 14, which is a much smaller scope project, to hear from the applicant on that presentation.
And that was my suggestion,
That's okay.
but now I don't see him.
That's okay. We will then therefore proceed with agenda item number 2, the 295 Calhoun Street project.
All right, 295 Calhoun Street is in Charleston Village, Height District 7, and in the Old City District. The applicant is requesting conceptual approval for new construction of a 7-story mixed-use development. Context slides. This is showing the red box is showing the property. This is on the south side of Calhoun Street across from Roper Hospital. Alberta Long Lake is behind it. Halsey Boulevard is to the east. Some images from some context images of today. And that was looking east to it. This is across the street. That was the 1-story building that was demolished that's on the site previously. Okay, and we will hear from the applicant.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the BAR. Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Jason Long. I'm with Southeast Development, and I'm presenting for 295 Calhoun today. Mr. Chairman, I've asked to keep it concise.
Would you like an extension?
If I need an extra 5 minutes, may I have it?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you, but I'll do my best to keep it. We're here today, and we're very proud to present our brand new design for 295 Calhoun. This new design is a result of listening to BAR feedback from previous presentations and comments from our last presentation. We heard in our last presentation that the 8-story was not desirable. We completely moved away from that design. We heard comments about Charleston being characterized by narrow frontages and vertical proportions. You'll see that as evidence today in our presentation. Also, this presentation is a result of a meeting with city staff, Corey and Lawrence. You'll see hyphens introduced and other elements that are a result of those meetings. Further, we've met with interested neighbors, particularly those along Halsey Boulevard. We've met with Mason's Prep. We've met with residents who live in the Halsey Park townhomes. We've met with on numerous occasions and incorporated design elements that they've provided to us. Also, residents of Halston Village. We did meet with Historic Charleston Preservation Society last week. We offered to pull this presentation for any specific comments that we do incorporate. through that call. Lawrence, would you mind flipping to page 4 of the presentation? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, I think our page numbers are going off from the slide number, but thank you. So this is the view on Halsey. This is our new design for Halsey Boulevard, our 7-story design. This design introduces a 4-story element that provides a townhome feel for the pedestrian at the street level. Thank you, Lawrence. So there's a series of 4-story elements that give this townhome feel as you're walking along Halsey. We have a very significant step on the 7th floor. This is a 38-foot step from the edge of the building, from the 7th floor to the 6th floor. You'll also see hyphens introduced in this presentation. This is to break up the mass vertically. This is when I was referencing comments on the hyphens from city staff. You'll see how it breaks the top level up and breaks the vertical portion of the building up. Very nicely, we're very happy with how this turned out. Lawrence, would you please go to page 5? Thank you. This is another Halsey view. Really gives a good feel for the pedestrian walking by, and a true feel of townhomes and a series of smaller buildings walking by. Would you please go to page 7? One more. Thank you. So this is our view along Calhoun Street. You'll see changes that are a result of comments that we heard at BAR. We've heard comments about the Chamfer Corner. That it wasn't Charleston. We heard that there was too much glass involved in the corner. What we've done here is drastically reduced the glass. We've enclosed it, brick masonry. It's also much smaller than it previously was before in other designs. We continue the modulation of the building that we've had, but we've also introduced another color of brick material to help with the vertical portion. We have different views or different options here. We have a more white brick and then a more gray brick. Quite frankly, we're fine either way with the DR direction, whether that's a lighter brick or a darker brick here. This was just a suggestion that we thought we'd incorporate over the vertical proportions here. Also, we have the balconies flanking each appendage there that again helps to break up the building vertically. Would you please go to page 9? Great. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So this is the view on the west side of the building. We've also introduced these 4-story elements on the west side of the building. We carry these over from the Halsey side. So this is a new look for this side of the building as well. While we realize that down the road we're adjacent to the Roper parking lot here, property zone for a larger building down the road, but we heard that this side is important for pedestrians too. So we've introduced these 4-story elements. In addition, and speaking to the pedestrian element, we have a linear park. This provides a very unique experience along Calhoun as it introduces the ability to walk to water, which is not there now. So this is a public park. It's a linear park. It's a pedestrian access to the boardwalk that we intend to build along the lake on the back side of the property. Lawrence, would you please go to slide 12? Thank you. So this is the rear of the property where we relate to the lake. We've heard when we were at 8 stories that stepping was important on the lake side of the property. While this is not seeking architectural merit, we continue to want to respond to VAR comments and introduce the stepping. So you see the step from 7 stories to 6 stories to 5 stories. I think this is important. However, it's a reduction in square footage. It's a reduction in height. And quite frankly, we lost our best units that are overlooking the water on the back, but we feel like that's an important move, and we're happy to do it, and we like this design. Would you please go to page 13? This is a slide that shows our new building relative to other buildings, taller buildings that are around us. We are shorter than the Brooklyn Hospital, obviously the NUSC building and the Ashley House. And so we really studied the context of our block and our adjacent properties to come up with this design. So to the north, again, we relate to these taller medical buildings. To the west, we relate to the Roper parking lot. It has a taller zoning, 85 feet on the property, as well as the Ashley House, which is 138 feet. On the east, we relate to medical buildings, townhomes, and as I mentioned before, we've been on that on numerous occasions and responded and incorporated comments from. And lastly, south, we relate to Long Lake. I mentioned the stepping previously, but each side of this building has been uniquely designed and thought out in this design to relate contextually to its surroundings. The process, this iterative process that we've gone through to this point has made this design much better than the previous design we presented. We're proud of this design, and we know it will be an asset for the city. We appreciate your consideration. I hope you will support our conceptual design tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. You're well within your allotted time.
Thank you. That was my goal.
Very good. Anyone else on the applicant's team? Hearing none. As I mentioned, we have all had the opportunity to digest written comment that was submitted by noon as of yesterday. I also have a very full gallery this evening. Brief reminder before we get started, if each member of the public wishing to speak on this agenda item would state their name and address for the record with their remarks.
Excuse me, can I speak on behalf of Southeastern Development?
Well, the developer of the applicant has a lot of time. I gave it to him. So if you choose to speak, and Mr. Mills or someone wants to speak, that's
Well,
fine.
he's also in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I'm in the neighborhood. My name's Rick Reiner. I'm an artist. I also own a couple of galleries on King Street downtown.
I'm sorry, Mr. Reiner, and I'm familiar with your gallery. Are you a part of the applicant's team? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to.
It's not a public comment.
Okay, all right. Well, we're in the public
We have
comment
2
period,
minutes. 2 minutes.
so you have 2 minutes. And I'm sorry, Mr. Reiner, for cutting you off.
That's okay.
We know who you are. Your address for the record, please.
Okay, well, I'm an artist, and more importantly, I live at B Street on the 7th floor. So my view is overlooking around Holiday Inn. And I just recall, when I moved in, I think there was a dirt lot out of my bedroom window, which now became West Edge. The Children's Hospital was out there. For years, I lived in Marion Square. That's Piccolo Spoleto. And I watched the federal building, the asbestos being eliminated, and suddenly it became the Dewberry Hotel. So all I'd like to say is I've viewed the renderings, and I can say they're aesthetically very pleasing, architecturally, in my opinion. And I painted a lot of the buildings around town. And the juxtaposition between modern and old is what really turns me on. That's what I like to do. I painted a Roper building and all kinds of different things. So I've seen these new renderings, and it's very pleasing.
Thank you, Mr. Reiner. Other members of the public wishing to be heard on this item. Yes, ma'am. If you'll approach the podium.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to come forward. My name is Kathy Crawford, and my husband David Crawford and I both live at 182 Wentworth Street, and we are in the block between Ashley and Gadsden Street. So we are within 5 blocks of this development. Personally, I think this development fits in to what the city is currently doing all around the city. If you've driven around the city, around the perimeter of the city, this building pales in comparison to a lot of the other development that's going on. Morrison Yard, everything that's going up between Meeting Street Road, the Jasper. And I've looked at the plans for this building for years. And what this developer is trying to do to mitigate flooding in this city, which impacts all of us in this city, is highly welcomed. If you, on a sunny day, on a full king moon, the hospital district is flooded. You can hardly get into the medical university. And what he's trying to do to mitigate the flooding around the hospital district is commendable. And thank you very much. And I just don't see why there's such objection to this when you look at everything else that's going on in the city and it doesn't compare. The scope, this building through the scope and the size doesn't compare to what's going on in the peninsula. And personally, and if I offend anybody, I'm sorry, but I'm offended by the Preservation Society that keeps sending out emails telling people to come to meetings to object because they don't like it. And I don't know why they don't like it. They don't explain why they don't like it, but it's not going to be impactful on the area that it is, that's on there now. Actually, it'll be a much pleasant sight to see than the blight that's already there. This empty parking lot with concrete. Children's Hospital is taller, the Ashley House is taller. And then you have the Jasper just down the street, which is beautiful. And this is going to add to the beauty of that, and plus the walkability of the town. Me and my neighbors, we're all in agreement to this project. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mrs. Crawford. And a polite reminder, I think we pride ourselves on being a very cordial and polite board. Just a friendly reminder.
What was that?
I said we pride ourselves on having very civil meetings and cordial meetings. Friendly reminder that while we understand everybody's livability, zoning, et cetera concerns, you can find your comments to the architecture, the aesthetics of the neighborhood, which you did, but
Okay.
perhaps not some of those issues like flooding,
and
drainage,
honestly,
traffic.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I really didn't mean to offend anybody. I really didn't.
You did
I'm
fine,
sorry.
Mrs. Crawford. Further members of the public wishing to be heard? Yes, sir, if you'd approach the podium.
I'm Jeremy Onspach, board member at Mason Prep. Student, I have 3 kids there. I've been driving past this site for many, many years. Chairman of the board was unable to present today, so he asked if I would. We are in support of the project. I've had the opportunity to be on a call and meet with developers along with a few board members and with the newest plan. I believe a letter was submitted formally from Mason Prep. I could read it if there's value, but I don't think there probably is since it was submitted. I just wanted to know that Mason Prep's represented through me as a board member, and the board is in support of the project. We felt like the safety of that corridor, the changes they're making, the thoughts around the park and all is all incredibly effective and will be a value add to the school.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Onspach. Further members of the public wishing to be heard? Mr. Anderson?
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for having me. I'm Tom Anderson, and I live at 31 Jamestown Road in Crescent. I'm going to try to be brief, but bear with me. I'd like to share my frame of reference in support of 295 Calhoun Street. By way of background, I'm the retired CEO of the MSC Foundation. I'm no longer employed there, but along the way with my career there, we had a lot to do with the development, redevelopment, disposition of a lot of the properties in the medical district. When you look at MSC's employment, look at the College of Charleston, look at Citadel, the VA, and to some extent Roper, who is vacating Peninsula, you've got some 25,000 employees. And I don't know if that doesn't have anything to do with the size and scope of the building, but it has a lot to do with the next point I want to make. This growth in jobs, or well-paying jobs of teaching professionals, physicians, nurses, therapists, supporting admin staff, housekeeping, grounds, campus security, all need a place to live that's affordable. If you look at affordable housing and walkability setting in and around the medical district It's sorely lacking, especially in retail, grocery, those sorts of things, in addition to housing staff that sometimes sits on I-26 commuting to the peninsula when they would much prefer to walk to work from a facility like this. Walkability versus I-26, I think we all know those problems. I studied the design of 295 Calhoun, which, by the way, replaces what was once a substandard, I'll say unhealthy building that housed MUSC's family medicine. I rode by the site again this afternoon just to get my bearings. And what is proposed is much higher and better use of that property than what was once there, which didn't house anybody. It might have trained some family medicine physicians, but it was an inadequate facility. I understand it's been approved by the BAR. Understand it's in compliance with all zoning setbacks, height restrictions, etc. And by the way, this project is making a 7-figure contribution to the city's affordable housing initiatives. Didn't have to do it, but that's the way this deal is calculated. That's what is being what's taking place. In my opinion, Southeastern Development has been a good Charleston neighbor, and I'll give you an example. In one of the numerous hurricanes we've had when the medical district was flooded, someone else alluded to the flooding. MUSC was working, and I'm sure Roper was too, 24/7 around the clock with no power, running off generator power, stressing physicians, stressing the staff, what have you. Dick Mills called me and said, for your folks, your nurses and doctors having to work around the clock, not getting to go home. I said, yes. Dick said, send any and all who need a hotel room, a shower, a couple hours of sleep to the Hilton Garden Inn. We own it. It's available at no charge, and you stay as long as you need to. That's the kind of people that we're dealing with that are developing 295. So I would say I'm in support of the project. It is of the highest and best use of the site. To my knowledge, it's been approved, and I don't understand the objections of not supporting it. So I'd like to go on the record of being in support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Further members of the public wishing to be heard on this agenda item? Yes, sir, feel approach.
Hello again, my name is David Cooper. I live at 66 Gadsden Street downtown. Just a point of reference, I will see this development every day from my house. I think this is the 4th meeting we've had, and I don't know what else we can ask for from this developer. We've granted multiple concessions on the height, square footage. They've incorporated over 40 or 50 some odd design changes over the last 2 years as a result of feedback from the various members of the community. They've done nothing but demonstrate what a great partner they'll be for the city, and what a great neighbor they'll be for us who live around the development. They've gone out of the way to meet with just about anybody and everybody who will be impacted by this project. As a result of all these efforts, they've now got, as you've heard, they've got the backing with various neighborhood associations, the condominium and townhome associations, Mason Prep, the Medical University. So it's clear there's a groundswell of support around this project. And now that the current design is 7 stories, I don't know what else we can do to take this project apart. I think it's time we move on from the mischaracterizations about it being too big, or too boxy, or some historical significance. So whatever your personal or professional opinions are, the facts are that there's an overwhelming amount of support for the project. Design will be well within what's the parameters of what's allowed at the site. It'll be a significant visual enhancement relative to some of the buildings around there. This is going to be a great thing. It's going to provide a lot of amenities to the surrounding neighborhood. It's going to make a significant investment in the public improvements that are sorely needed, as you heard, to address some of the flooding issues that are there. So if your job is to do the right thing for the city and citizens, then I think you should approve the project.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Further members of the public wishing to be heard?
Hello there, my name is Leslie Turner and I live at 76 Halsey, so I'm part of Halsey Park, which is a neighborhood just south of this on Halsey Boulevard. Just wanted to correct one thing. The developer over time has said repeatedly that he has the support of Halsey Park. there was a letter written by a different board called the Park over 2 years ago. The board has remained silent since then. Not saying they're supportive of this project or not in support. There's a new board now. I'm here with 6 or 7 of my neighbors from Halsey Park that are not in support of this. Personally, I think the design could be better. I think the materials are not attractive. The balconies definitely are kind of more like a motel, but that's the purview of the BAR and their expertise. But I just wanted to make clear that a lot of the residents of Halsey Park are not in support of this. So, any of the other neighbors would speak. And also, I want to make the developers also said a number of times it's part of the medical district. It's not. It's part of Charleston Village, and it's our neighborhood with lower stories and everything that it'll be affecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Other members of the public wishing to be heard. I have someone who's waited patiently here, so that was you. To the podium a few times.
Thanks. My name is Sonia Taylor. I'm actually here on behalf of my husband who had to work out of town today. I live at 27 Broadwood Road in the Crescent. I'm here today in support of the developer and would like y'all encourage the board to approve the project. We don't live downtown currently and haven't in a number of years, but my husband owns a number of properties. One of them is 281 Calhoun Street, which is the old bank building, the T building. I've looked at the renderings that they've done, as has Dave. We both think it's a beautiful building. It looks like a good use of the space, and we think it's in context with the surrounding areas. And for that reason, I think that you guys should support it and let this project go forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. Further members of the public wishing to be heard. Yes, sir.
Chairman, my name is Charlie Carmody. I live at 107 New Street. We've been here multiple times. The applicant has changed and varied the design and the scope of the project using the BAR comments as well as the city comments. The building is now a 7-story building, which is good. The city needs residents to live downtown in order to keep the Peninsula City vibrant. You need people to live here. You don't need people to, I don't want New Orleans here. I don't want another hotel. I don't want, you need people to live on the peninsula, and that's what we're trying to do here. We also need people to live in his apartment building and work at MUSC. So it will be a plus for that. The medical district needs it. I would ask that you to please approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmody. Other members of the public wishing to be heard. Ms. Minigan in the back.
Finnegan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We urge you to stand firm in denying this inappropriate design that is wrong for the site and wrong for Charleston. The board's previously stated rationales for denial can be employed as there has been no meaningful change to the core problem with this design. Its overwhelming height, scale, and mass. While now within the property's height allowance by zoning, it's clear this proposal is attempting to make up for the loss of the additional floor with an even more aggressive design. The building is even more voluminous, pushing the 7-story toward the rear of the site, which places greater height and mass directly on the 2- and 3-story context of Charleston Village. We fundamentally disagree with the conceptual approach of how the building is configured, which extrudes the footprint of the site and has an incredibly blocky massing, making no attempt to break up the building into distinct masses with vertical proportions or modulate the height as it approaches the small-scale historic neighborhood. The design continues to show all the same architectural issues that led the board to deny the project on previous occasions. The building still has an overly heavy base, tall, sheer facades, and an absence of fine-grained detail that prevent it from relating to the human scale. The treatment of the top of the building is particularly weak, and perhaps most importantly, there is no attempt to relate to Charleston's unique character, which is defined by simple, repetitive elements that create harmony in facades. Rather, this building continues to have a very busy design with too many fenestration types, architectural features, and movements in plane. The BAR principles articulate the characteristics we value for new construction in Charleston, and this should be used as a starting place to redesign a new plan for the site. We urge the board to send a strong message to this developer, and one it clearly needs to hear, that a reimagined approach to the scale and massing of this building is needed. and we are keenly interested in being part of that discussion. A key tenet of our work is being open and available to collaborate with project teams well in advance of project meetings, public meetings, to ensure best outcomes. To that end, while we appreciate the developer reaching out to us, we were disappointed the request to meet came last week only after submitting this proposal. In good faith, we will continue to provide helpful, constructive comments to push this project in the right direction. And in that vein, we have provided the developer with multiple examples of large-scale projects that we have supported and successfully come back with a fresh approach to their design after having been initially denied. Similarly, we feel going back to the drawing board is the appropriate path for this project. However, if the board entertains this proposal, we strongly urge you to exercise your authority to require a downward adjustment of a half story, which is in line with your responsibility given the severity of this proposal. But we must stress the stakes are high. Given the building will be a highly impactful permanent fixture on Charleston's urban landscape, we cannot afford to get it wrong. Please hold the line and create an ironclad motion for denial for reasons based on height, scale, mass, and architectural direction. Charleston deserves a project on this site that complements and enhances its unique sense of place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Minigan. Further members of the public wishing to be heard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation. We're disappointed to see a nearly identical version of the same building that's been to the VR 3 previous times and has been denied. The development team has made it abundantly clear that they're not interested in responding to the repeated concerns and comments of the Charleston Village Neighborhood Association, preservation organizations, the Board of Architectural Review members, and concerned citizens of the city who have reached out literally by the hundreds to oppose this project. The Historic Charleston Foundation has opposed the redistricting of this site from 75 feet to 7 stories at Planning Commission in 2020. At that time, we felt that the building at either 75 feet tall or 7 stories tall was too much for this site. Our priority since that time has been to reduce the height, scale, and mass of the proposed building to achieve something that's more appropriate for the surrounding context in Charleston Village. It is our opinion that the program for this site, a nearly 300-foot by 300-foot 7-story apartment building that wraps a parking deck, is wholly incompatible for any site in downtown Charleston. This format of development is inappropriate for our city, and especially for a site that immediately is adjacent to sensitive historic neighborhoods. We therefore continue to recommend outright denial of this project based on height, scale, mass, and architectural direction. We do, however, appreciate the applicants have eliminated their request for an extra floor based on architectural merit. But even with that request off the table, we are still of the opinion that the building is too tall, even when conforming to what the zoning envelope allows. We continue to recommend for the denial of this project. At a minimum, if the board is going to entertain this application, they should reduce the height of the building by a half story, which you're entitled to.
Thank you, Mr. Schwebler. Other members of the public wishing to be heard on this item? Going once, going twice? Okay. City staff comments and recommendations, Ms. Parrish.
Start with the staff note. The submittal we're reviewing is a 7-story building that does not require finding of architectural merit. This is a new submittal, and for the benefit of the public, the board's options are to approve with conditions, which we normally have listed as staff and board comments, to defer or to deny the application. The criteria that we are applying for this review is found in the ordinance section 54-240C, the 2017 VAR principles, and the VAR policy statement of Charleston. So I'm going to reiterate what the chair has already stated, but I wanted to, for the assurance of the public, the written public comment that was submitted for this meeting, as well as the meeting on January 11th, where this project was heard, has been shared with board members. All right, staff comments. Number 1, restudy the stone base of the east and west elevations for consistency around the building. 2, in some locations, and I'm going to just state the page number, or we can go through it as needed, but in some locations, such as on page 4, the 4-story portions along the east and west appear to be offset from the building corners at the recessed balconies. In other locations, these appear to be coplanar, meaning that the balcony is the sidewall of the 4-story portion in a more clean and in a unified manner. However, the cornice on the 4-story portions, if wrapped, will intersect with the metal railing on the recessed balconies, and this conflict requires additional study. Some locations, the cornice at the top of the 6-story portion wraps the corner and intersects with the balcony railing. In other locations, this cornice ends abruptly. Study this conflict. 4, there are many intersections of brick cornice, stone base, metal balcony floors, and balcony railings. The policy statement on Charleston standards emphasizes craftsmanship. All of these material intersections need study and careful detailing. Number 5, for consistency with the remainder of the building, the voids on the penthouse, which are recessed covered outdoor spaces, should be made to coincide with the recessed balconies below. Number 6, the use of darker brick at the center portion of the Calhoun Street elevation is an anomaly from elsewhere on the building. The dark tone blends in with the dark metal, diminishing any possible contrast which could help this portion be perceived to have more depth. The previous lighter color visually reinforced the introduction of more vertical building portions and the breaking up of the massing. Restudy the color at this location. 7, considering the lack of recess on the penthouse along Calhoun, meaning that the penthouse is flush with the exterior wall below, it would be worth investigating raising the brick exterior to include the northeast and northwest masses as well as the center mass. Number 8, omit the heavy overhang of the pool deck over the retail sidewalk at the south. This cornice, while aligned with the cornice on the remainder of the building, is too thick and too heavy visually to cantilever in this way. 9, the shallow, tall, delicate brackets of the penthouse along Calhoun Street are a welcome feature to the penthouse language, and this should be consistent on the penthouse rather than disrupted at the center of Calhoun. 10, restudy the window arrangement, order, and rhythm of the penthouse to better coordinate with the window sizes being used and with the architecture below. For example, at Calhoun Street, west end of elevation, the corners of the penthouse are different widths while seemingly set over a symmetrical bay of the building. 11, use express lintels or headers over openings at the 6th floor for consistency with the remainder of the building. 12, at the center portion of the Calhoun Street facade, the headers of the recessed balconies should align. Revise. This seems to be a coordination issue between floor systems, window headers, and balcony floors, which should be confirmed. And 13, confirm the height of material for the proposed mason wall indicated to be 8 feet on one page and 6 foot on another. So all of these items noted are conditions that staff could work with the applicant on incorporating. Therefore, staff is recommending conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Parrish. The applicant has up to 5 minutes to respond if they choose to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dick Mills. I'm the chairman of Southeastern Development. So, my comments will be very brief. First off, a little negative is that what we have come to learn over these last 2 or 3 years of working through this is that really the only opposition that has been set forward to us on our project that can't come to us lies with the Preservation Society and the Historic Society. As recently as this week, we had other conversations asking for specific comments. So from the preservation was, we're not architects and we're not qualified to provide comments. We asked, it's hard for us to respond to questions or observations, make corrections, when nothing specific is often set forth. Second thing is that this is way over zone. Now, these are 2 organizations, the only 2, that followed us hard during the planning and zoning process, which was approved unanimously. Going to the city council, again, these are the groups that fought for the zoning and opposed the zoning. The zoning was approved unanimously. So what this says is the planning and zoning of this city, the city council of the city, says they want to see the development that we're offering here, and we work with them now for several years, to be approved on this site. Now, enough of that. I really want to say that we have spent a lot of time working with Roper Hospital, and the chairman gave us a nice letter of recommendation. Medical University, they supported us throughout. Mr. Anderson's comments today were very, thank you, sir. The Mason Prep, great school, great people, excited to work with them and with the park and improvements to what's happening at their campus. Business owners here along Calhoun Street have spoken that this is a welcome development. And the comments we've gotten back from these people is generally around one word. It's a beautiful development. We think that it is. But you know what? We've been working on this design for a couple of years, but it's evolved. Today, this really is a design that we have been working with Lawrence and Tori a couple of years, and they've made many, many change recommendations which we incorporate. We've taken minutes to this meeting, and we've written down every comment from this group, and we tried to bring them into the design, the architecture of our development. At this juncture, it's a much better building than when we started. And Jan's here to talk about any questions you might have. But we kind of feel like today, this is no longer our design. This is a design that has been developed with Tori, Lawrence, and your staff. This is a design that each of you have given us really good feedback. And for that, we have a better building. It's a totally different building than our first presentation. We're excited to move forward. We hope that you will support us. And we thank you for your input, because it's a wonderful design today and much better than before.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. All right. We will begin board discussion and a potential vote on this agenda item. What do my fellow board members have to say about agenda item number 2? Mr. Meadows first, sure.
Lawrence, if you would go to page 5.
James, when you, all my page numbers are off by one, so I don't know if you went by the page number printed or the number in the PDF.
This is right on.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. So the brick cornice at the top of the bays, which I like these bays, it feels heavy to me, and it is apparently, or it appears to be about the same size as the cornice of the area above. And maybe that could be scaled down to more appropriately fit that bay as opposed to matching the upper bay. And I'm not sure it actually matches it exactly, but it appears to. Page 6. So the entry surround is, I feel heavy, and I feel that it's disconnected from the surrounding facades, and that may be what you're trying to do. But I feel a disconnect with that, and I feel like it's very heavy. Page 7. Page 7. Yeah. So this is just an observation on my part, and the way that I'm going to describe this is, if you look at the entry that we were just talking about, and you take that and you modify it, and then you put it in the center of each of the sections of the buildings, and then stack one on top of the other, that's what it looks like to me. And then if you look at the individual, I'm going to use the word cornice, but where they start and stop, the detailing on those, and this is for further down the road than conceptual, I know this, but the detailing of those appears to be different on each one of them. Some of them have some support, some of them have a little relief in the middle. That just may be technical with the equipment. But the windows where they tie into that stack of in the middle of the building, the windows just seem to be butt into that. And I'm talking about, here. And it's, I don't really understand how that works, but I mean, there needs to be some adjustment to that. And when that adjustment is made, I don't know how it's going to play out in the next step. Page 8. So it's really interesting because I find this to be an attractive view. I mean, this looks nice. And then if you go to this, I think it's a nice relief, nice color, nice glass, nice mixture of reliefs. And then if you could look at sheet 9 and 10, so 9, it's like it ends like a third of the way into the building here, you know, and it stops. And I realize that's part of the design, but that's when you get the heaviness of the building back again on that first section of the building. So the photographs that show from that first bay back, it's very attractive. I mean, I find it to be very attractive. But then when you add on this last section, it's just a big, large mass. So what could be done to soften that big section of mass wall? Sheet 11 or 10, I'm sorry, let's go to 10. Yeah, once again, you go back to sheet 10, you're looking towards the lake and you see something that looks completely different. I mean, it's a very nice rhythm that's happening on that section of the wall. So what could be done in that front section? And I realize square footage is all an issue, but what could be done to create some relief on that front section also? And that front section is wider than the back section. I think there are four groups of 2 windows on the front section, and on the back section there's 2 sections that have 2 windows, but in the middle there's just 1 window. So you know, when you look at it, you can see a difference there. Sheet 11. Sheet 11, what I'm specifically looking at is the lake side. And you know, there's just a lot going on. But a lot going on is, I think, better than looking at the large section of wall on the north end of the west wall. And then if you look through and look at the inside, you can see another large bay of wall that's, it seems overwhelming to me. That's very large. So what could be done to create some relief in that section? And photo 12. Again, if you look at the inside, and you know, the fact is it's just visible. So I mean, one of the challenges with this building is every side's visible. And that's what makes it hard. But if you look where you turn back in, you've again got these large masses of surface that aren't broken up. What could be done to break them up? Maybe not to the degree of the large bedroom bays running down Halsey Street, the east and west side, but something on that outside. I don't know what that is, but some relief. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Matters. Further board comments?
Not follow, James. It's the first time that the applicant has shown us a 7-story design that's actually zoning compliant. Doesn't ask for architectural merit. But I want to mention that it's nice to see that we still have the boardwalk there. Obviously, we need it on that side to access the retail. But it's nice that that element is not gone. Also, the linear park is not gone. That is also the public contribution to the public. So that's nice to see. Looking at the new design, I actually see a better sense of order than in the previous designs. I feel like the facade has been cleaned up. In many of the previous meetings, we have mentioned details that are more preliminary of nature, but they were so on in our eyes, and they have been worked on. So it's a cleaner, more orderly facade in my mind. I also think the first thing you see is the lighter color of the brick. I think it's definitely an improvement in the darker red brick, which always felt massive and increased the sense of the mass to me. So I think the lighter color brick is good. If you could go to the Calhoun Street facade, I actually think the introduction of an accent brick just on that side helps, because previously the 3 masses, they were just too close together. The recess wasn't deep enough, so it just felt too repetitive and too daunting. And I feel now this facade has 2 anchor masses with a lighter brick and then a differentiated central mass. And I think it works well. The color of the brick, this is again a preliminary step that we will discuss then. I think the slightly lighter color would work better. That's shown here in some other renderings that almost appears black.
which is not a very indigenous brick to Charleston. So the lighter brick almost reminds me of a painted brick in the historic part of town. It feels more indigenous to me. So those are a good improvements. The chamfered corner at the corner entry, I definitely think it's an improvement to scale that back and emphasize it less, and have it reduce the amount of glass so that you feel like it's again a symmetrical building, because generally it's very symmetrical, and the corner entrance was. We go then to the Kelsey Boulevard facades. There was, I expressed always concern about the response of the facades to the neighborhood and to the lake. So I think the introduction of those projected 4-story masses is really successful. It really scales the building down, and when you walk down the sidewalk, this is really what you perceive first, those 4-story masses. Unfortunately, when you study the floor plans, the recess that you see on the 3rd and 4th floor doesn't go all the way down, and that creates a little bit of a problem here, where you just have a minimal planting strip next to the 10-foot sidewalk. So I think here it starts. So here you don't really have a recess. There's some planting shown, but I doubt that you can really plant something there. So if those recesses could be increased to be closer to the 3rd and 4th floor recess, then you can actually add planting there, add some more public space. So when you walk down a 10-foot sidewalk, you're not walking along one wall there. You really want to see those four masses, 4-story masses expressed all the way down. And then on the lake side, I've now to move to a lakeside perspective. I also think that the recess of the 6th floor, or the step back of the 7th floor is good. It would be better if it would be further. It should really go all the way back to that 2nd hyphen to really make the step down effect meaningful. Previously, we had an 8-story building and it would step down. It's easier to step down from an 8-story building to 6-story. Now we have 7 stories. And there's just a small step down in this last 38-foot portion. So I think if that could be studied to be pushed back a little further, it's more successful. Other than that, the 7-story corners, these are more comments on the preliminary level. The corners of the penthouse feels a little heavy to me. You want to keep that as a light element to reduce the visual scale of it. That could be studied to be less strong. I would rather strengthen the brick corners with some kind of brick pattern, and then reduce the penthouse as much as possible. Same with the balconies. I think that was mentioned in the public comment previously. They seem really heavy and deep. If that could be studied to reduce the depth of those balconies, that would make the building more elegant. And lastly, on the roof plan, it's just schematically shown right now. There's an area shown for the rooftop equipment that's not shown right now. That's probably not developed yet. We want to make sure that that rooftop equipment is really pushed back to the center of the building and doesn't come out to those wings that face the lakeside. I think with that, overall, the project has improved. It's a whole story shorter, and I agree also with all of the staff comments that these should be addressed. Some of them are preliminary in nature, and some are more conceptual, but I would agree with that.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Further board comments?
Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind entertaining me for just a moment, I'd like to read the names and the position of those who submitted public comment.
Sure.
Thank you. I believe there are roughly 30 individuals and organizations that provided public comment submitted to us for the February 8th and the January 11th meetings. For those in favor of the proposal, Mr. Botcher of Halsey Street, Mason Preparatory School, and Ms. Foxhall representing the Mason Preparatory Foundation. The remaining are all those in opposition. Ms. Gentile of Queen Street, Ms. Cox of Berry Street, Ms. Turner of Berry Street, Ms. Turner of Halsey Street, Mr. Ewing of Ashley Avenue, Ms. Cox of Berry Street, Ms. Bleeker of Halsey, Mr. Wirtz of Halsey, Ms. Davis of Maiden Lane, Mr. Rash of State Street, Mr. Coit of Queen Street, Mr. Hannigan of Montague Street, Mr. Glushkoff of Ashley Avenue, Ms. Turner of Berry Street, Ms. Turner again for Halsey Boulevard, Ms. Rosenberg for Prulo, Ms. Davidson for West Edge, Mr. Ewing of Ashley Avenue, Mr. Yarborough of Mary Street, and Mr. Clark, whose street I didn't write down, forgive me. It's been mentioned by the applicant that Halston Village Neighborhood Association has submitted or has shared approval with the design. It has been entered into the public record that they have shared that all 4 letters of ours have expressed concern and not approval. These are the neighbors of the project, both immediately and within the overall neighborhood. I'd like to point out all of the staff comments that were shared this evening as well. From what I've been able to read, this constitutes a full restudy of the entire project. In staff comment, number 1, restudy the stone base. Number 2, this conflict requires additional study. Number 3, study this conflict. Number 4, material intersections need study and careful detailing. Number 6, restudy the color of this location. Number 7, this area is worth investigating. Number 8, omit the heavy overhang that is too heavy visually to cantilever. Number 10, restudy the window arrangement, order, and rhythm. Number 12, simply revise. This to me constitutes a complete restudy of the height, scale, mass, and architectural direction of the project. The city is supposed to be a work of art, and I don't think this contributes to the public sector.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Further board comments? Ms. Sobchak.
Okay, so we are again at conceptual level, which is height, mass, and scale. Referring to height, and made concessions and reduced the building height from 8 to 7 story, which is compliant with the ordinance at this time. And also that 7 story right now is a reading as penthouse, which is emphasis on the 6 story overall, pretty much. On other note, so that's height, mass. The mass is still an issue to me because it's still square. Nevertheless, it's been broken probably more successfully on east and west sides, with the bringing down portions of the building to 4 story, hyphens, stepping in, stepping out, interrupting with balconies and things like that. Also, both of the sides, I think they are successful at the pedestrian level. Detailing wise and things like that. I agree with Carol about the Halsey Street. It may need a little bit more relief there. The Calhoun Street is kind of still most bothering for me. It's still horizontal more than sides of the east and west, particularly the middle part. So it's not stepped back enough as we suggested earlier. And obviously the colors and hyphens with the but it's more lacy actually because you have balconies and things like that there, so still a little bit more horizontal. And the lakeside, which is south, if I remember correct, I guess that one is having the podium and public space for the units. It's still horizontal because I think because the heaviness of these projections of balconies and sunrooms and things like that, and it's trying to mimic the Charleston porches, but the sheer size of it is kind of pulling out of that. Most of the comments, I guess, which the staff comments and board members are actually about details which can be resolved through the preliminary. That yes, cornices are heavy here and there. There may be not consistency in from one part to another, but it's yes, at the same time it's 300 feet long facade, so it needs some relief from detail to detail, and it's actually, I think it's well done on the ground level. The corner, the entrance, because it's sort of narrow and it's a main entrance to the building, I think the portico or the entrance, correct size to me, and everything else is going well there. But I think staff had mentioned that 7-story needs to be probably stepped back because it's sort of hanging over. All that said, I think we're getting there, and thinking about materials, again, scale is details, yes, and talking about materials are not a typical brick, metals. There's cast stone and things like that is prevalent in Charleston. So at this time, I think we're ready for the next step. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Socha. Further board comments? Can we go to the slide with the Chancery corner? I have a little disagreement with some of my fellow board members in that I think that this Chancery corner is one of the more successful aspects of the building. It's going to be at an important location. It's monumental. I previously encouraged the applicant to think in terms of it being a major building on a major venue, and this element, I think, succeeds in that regard. We've discussed ad nauseum the fact that there's this inherent conflict with the Charleston Village scale and the massive medical office buildings, other medical buildings that have been over the street for years because of what's allowed in that overlay. If we move to the Calhoun Street facade, I actually think that this facade is complementary to Roper, although I think I think there's an overall lack of harmony in this elevation. It somewhat mimics what you see on the Roper elevation that's immediately across the street. In that regard, it's complementary, and based on the height analysis provided by the applicant, it in some ways mirrors that building across the street. So in that regard, it is attempting to bridge the medical district height overlay and the problem we have with Halsey Park and Charleston Village and the scale of the buildings there. And the developer shown that by the relief on the Halsey Street elevation, trying to have a more human scale and reducing it. I'll leave my comments to that for now. Further board comments.
If I may, looking at this facade again, it is and it is not, maybe can help. But, and specifically, it needs more step back on the middle. It's just too massive and too horizontal.
More step back across that elevation.
No, not across, just the middle.
Just the middle. Okay.
You talk about the top floor or the recesses between?
Recesses of the two wings of, then you bring more verticality, but also changing the color, it's another thing. But it's kind of each portion it reads well by itself, but not as a whole. And there's a that sheet, I think it's 13, which is comparison of the elevation, the heights of the different buildings. And for some reason, it's showing the south elevation rather than Kahuna elevation.
That's
And
true.
if you show the Kahuna elevation, you will see the difference.
That's true. Thank you for pointing that out. Further board comments?
I'll make a motion, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
We have a motion. Mr. Metters?
And before I make a motion, I'm gonna make a couple of comments. Is that I have said before, and I will restate now, that I believe a 7-story building can work here. I'm not in, zoning is not an issue for us, but I just want to make it clear from an architectural review board member, I believe a 7-story building can work here. I also believe that this was a positive step with your application, and I appreciate your continued commitment to working the plan. And I'm going to make a motion of deferral of plan, but I want to make it to include all board and staff comments, because there are still large areas that still need detailing, but I believe this project can move forward. But I think it's important that the board review another modification with consideration for questions that or comments that have been raised from both the staff and the board. Okay, so make a motion for deferral of the project for restudy with staff and board comments.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. There's a motion. We need a second, and then we can have discussion on that. Is there a second to Mr. Metters' motion? I'll second his motion. Discussion.
Before the vote?
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's problematic to add with staff comments because the comments were very different. And I'm not sure if the applicant, if it's helpful to the applicant to have all staff comments included, because they don't know where to start revising the building. So it might have to be a motion that specifically includes, a comment for the north elevation, east, south, and west elevation, or something along those lines.
So I want to tell you what my thoughts were.
Yeah.
Restudy with board and staff comments. They will take into consideration board and staff comments. That does not mean they'll make a modification as a result of the board and staff comments. Right? So they'll consider it. That's my thought on this, and that's the way I think it's appropriate. And I'm fine if we want to change that, but I wouldn't be the one making the motion if we did. I'm comfortable with the way that I stated it, and they have the freedom to then consider board and staff comments.
But then we might end up with the same.
You are correct,
building.
but I doubt it. And but time will tell.
So the motion is to defer incorporating board and staff comments by Mr. Metters, and I seconded. Any further discussion? Motion is in proper order, so I'll go down the roll. Ms. Wheeler, how do you vote on this motion?
Nay, not in favor.
Mr. Brown?
Yea in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yea in favor.
Ms. Sobchak?
Yea.
Myself, yea in favor. So motion to defer incorporating board and staff comments passes 4-1, and we look forward to working with the applicant to incorporate those issues. Thank you, Bill. doing okay? Okay. We'll move to agenda item number 3 was deferred for those who were not present. Agenda item number 4, Iron Forge Alley lots 13 and 14.
Can I make one suggestion?
Certainly.
Y'all need microphones.
Do you have difficulty with this?
Yeah, I was on the front row.
Thank you for letting us know that.
I
So,
can hear a word you said, I can barely hear anything she said.
I apologize.
Or
So
Mr. Meadows.
we have these ring microphones, and we actually get a little bit of an echo and feedback, so we can hear ourselves. But thank you for letting us know. We'll work
You
on
might
that.
could put one right there.
Yeah.
It's a concern that we share. Pardon? It's a concern that we share.
Oh, okay, good, because you really can't hear a thing that's being discussed.
Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you so
But
much.
as long as you can hear me, that's the important thing.
Well, I don't know about that.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Hey, I'm Sonia Taylor. Good to see you. Nice to meet you. David's
I didn't know she was in the.
Consider it all assured.
Happy to.
That's what I was gonna say.
This is
That's a lot of, I think you agree.
Really put it that way. I didn't really think about it that way.
Yeah, no, I think that was a very good observation. Mr. Jarrett,
Hello.
nobody wants to hear your presentation. That offends me.
There's a CFC basketball game tonight, so everyone's leaving here to that.
Great, well, I'll just jump right in. My name is Luke Jarrett. I'm an
Yeah, let me
hold on,
see if, I
hold
will
on.
probably have some context, lots of stuff. We just want the audience to be aware that it's on.
Tori, do her thing. You'll have floor in just a
Internet.
second.
I'm sorry.
That's
All
okay.
right, welcome to agenda item number 4, which is the new construction project on Iron Forge Alley. This is in the East Side neighborhood, District 2.5 to 3, and it's in the Old City District. The applicant is requesting conceptual approval for new construction of attached single-family dwellings. And for the online presence, we have some context slides. This is Iron Forge Alley making the Z shape in the interior of the block, and that is the particular location for this building. It's highlighted in red. This is the site plan showing you the particular location of this building. And some context photos. This one's from Hanover Street. It's on Street, looking into Iron Forge. All right, now we will hear from Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you very much. Hi. My name is Luke Jarrett. I'm an architect with Synchronicity, and we're the architect for this project. And we are also the landscape architects and planners for this project. I was here the other week to ask about cladding revision, so some of this stuff should be familiar. Hopefully, this part pretty brief. Foundry Alley is a PUD that encompasses existing structures along Nassau and Hanover streets, and then has 14 new single-family residences in the interior of the lot. They're all pretty simple, and the creation of a street connecting Hanover and Nassau through the site allows us to have these all. Lots 13 and 14, they're attached residences on individual parcels, and these are the last 2 potential structures for this site. When we initially moved this project through, this piece was included, but this project had a very long, interesting path to approvals. And so the initial client, who is not the current client or owner, elected to hold. And so now we've been asked to move forward with lots 13 and 14. So we're here tonight to ask for the board's approval for these 2 attached single-family residences. I think it's probably a pretty good idea to sort of start off briefly with some of the staff comments. We were here a long time ago, and the first staff comment is probably the most important for the board to consider, and also it's one that I think I would really like to ask that the board carefully consider. We had different constituency and different leadership at the city the last time this one went through, and there was nothing else on this site. Currently, this is the last structure to be approved. It's also, I believe we are underway or almost complete on every other structure. So the height, scale, and mass of this development is established. And we've included a couple of images in our presentation that show that. All of these buildings are designed within the parameters of the approved PUD, which does include the description of the allowable vertical height of these buildings here. So there was some initial concern, I guess, farther back. Yeah, okay, so there we go, thank you, sorry. The other part about the first comment is it's a little problematic in that the structure that we're proposing, if you would look, if you would skip ahead into our presentation to where there's sort of an aerial view that has the buildings in 3D massed on the site, I think it's a really helpful image. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so the building that we're talking about today is on the far left with the dashed box around it, and it is located adjacent to the rear yard of the parcel on Nassau Street. There is a structure there adjacent to the building that we're proposing. It is a decrepit two-story condemned and also constructed illegally building. So we would like to just make sure that that is being considered when we're looking at how we're impacting our neighbors. We're not right up against a inhabited, legally constructed building. It's got an X on it, and I'm surprised personally that it's still there. So what we have done in this revised design, and I'll talk about it in a minute, is make some steps to address that comment.
Look, which one is it?
We can see,
Oh, that's the
you can sort of
Nassau
barely
Street.
see, you can see it just peeking out in the corner there.
It's
Yeah.
just that right there, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the back of that parcel, the red roof down there. That's the main structure, and then at some point someone built that back there. So, and I believe I also, if you could go to the, I think I have images of that actual thing in the presentation a little farther in. Let me see if I can. But I just want to make sure we're all just aware of what's kind of going on with that one. Let's see, my presentation, where my presentation. Yeah, there we go. If you go to, it's our sheet A, thing. It's on the right hand side.
So when I walk back in there, that's what I'm seeing. Yeah, okay.
That's correct. And so these images also, they're demonstrating the massing and the elements that are currently, constructed on the site. So you can really see that the development has begun to take shape. And I also am really excited to say, if you go to the previous sheet, you can see that the impact on the public right-of-ways on all four sides of this property are where we feel pretty comfortable about. Our buildings are not, they're not imposing on the street. They're not detracting from the existing historic structures. There is a missing tooth right there in the second to the right image. There's a building that will be returned. There was one that burned. But, you can see we are very minimally visible and not impactful for the streetscapes. And that was always the design intent, and it is going along, in our opinion, pretty successfully. Let's see, and then the rest of these I'll just cover them in a presentation. So I'd like to start off, if we could move forward to the slides that have elevations. I think the floor plans are pretty straightforward. And let's start with sheet 8-201. We had submitted this one. This is the design that was submitted, initially, and we went through, got some comments on it, and then the next slide is what we would like to propose this evening. We have gone in and worked with the roof lines to lower the massing of the upper floor by bringing the eaves forward. We had previously had dormers that broke the roof edge, and I think what we really worked hard on is reducing the scale of some of these windows on the upper floor and changing the way that the roof worked to bring down a little bit of the scale of the building. We have also moved the 3-bay system on the second and third floors, which we feel like is a little more appropriate, and brings, in my opinion, it brings the building's verticality down a little bit by giving a little bit more interest in that solid horizontal massing left and right to the top of the second story, which I think is complementary. Another change that we've made previously, we were designing these buildings with a stucco base on them, and then as we've gone through development, we've had a couple of them revised to be approved for the siding to continue down. I think that it looks a lot, I like it a little more in this location. I feel like the connection between the first living floor and the ground floor, when they have the same cladding type, again, I feel like it makes the building a little less imposing. And I think that that's a pretty positive change with respect to that. Moving forward, just one page, please. You'll also notice that we've worked to simplify the size of the building, and this will, kind of again show you it's just a little less. We're trying to make it just a little less imposing. We could go to the next sheet, please, as well. It's pretty similar on the other side. And then A205, the next sheet. This is the sheet. This was initially facing the neighbor's parcel. If you would skip forward to our current proposed design. What we're trying to do here is simplify the facade of the house that faces their site. So, to limit the window openings into their areas. We have a window in the stair. The windows on the second living floors are in bathrooms. And so really trying to do our best to try to play a little cleaner against that facade and not emphasize, our building from there. And we really feel like this is creating the privacy and lowering the impact on our next door neighbor. Currently, the building that is there and decrepit, it goes up to, right between our first and second living floors. We really felt that this would be the right approach. It's a very typical Charleston approach to do the no window, low window to the neighbor. And so that sort of is the justification or the rationale behind this.
What is the distance between those two buildings? In the building that's about to fall down.
The one across? Oh, that's a great question, James, because I don't have a survey that shows their parcel.
But it's like 5 feet or 6 feet.
We are about, it varies from about 4 feet up to about 6 feet to the property line on our side. I expect their building is a few feet back, so we'd be in the neighborhood of, around 10 feet, I would imagine. And again, that structure will, at some point, that will be required to be demolished back there. Again, it's an unapproved, illegally constructed building. And imagine at some point they might want to put something back there. It's a good spot for it. And hopefully, when they do, what we would be doing here would allow them to do something similar. And we could, live back to back as good neighbors. I think that would be, it's pretty realistic. The next door neighbor's lot is extremely deep at some point. I believe that's a very real possibility. So if we could venture forward to the slide again to A006. And I'm going to kind of wrap my presentation up here. It's like, it's just before the material samples. It's going towards, I don't have a number, sorry. Oh, it's to the front. One more. There we go. Thank you very much. I really do like this graphic because I think it really does tell the tale of this development. You will see on the two structures in the bottom right-hand corner, those are called lots 8 and 9. Those are sitting behind really adorable restored Freedman cottages, and those buildings are a full story shorter than everything else on the site. That was done specifically to respect that the massing of the buildings in front of us. And this building here, you'll notice when it's compared to the other approved and under construction design of the sites, is not quite as far of a step as that, but it is very demonstrably lower in scale and vertical massing and impact. So we really feel that based on the designs that are approved and under construction within this development, the design that we are proposing this evening is very appropriate. It will be extremely minimally visible, if visible at all, from the public right-of-ways. But even still, we've worked to try to bring the scale down a little bit and to try to, make the building and the development in a way that's a little better than it was before. So we are here this evening asking for conceptual approval for height, scale, and mass for this proposed design. Again, I do keep harping on this. This is the last construction out on the site that is underway. And, you know, if the board sees fit to advance us an approval, if this does meet the parameters, we would be happy to work with staff to finalize this one. But, they're pretty straightforward and small with off the build house. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Somehow I think this one's gonna be easier than our last application. So want it to be.
I'm a little offended.
Don't worry, we will give you just as much attention.
Corey City staff, I was gonna say your recommendations are almost as long as this one on the
Good.
95 Calhoun.
It's all about the nature of the comments.
That's true.
All right. Just for the benefit of the board to hear in the bullet, this duplex structure came before the board in 2016, last seen in August of that year, and it was ultimately deferred. During its journey, there was some concern over the perception of excessive height relative to the mostly one-story utilitarian dependency structures around it to the north. As this is an entirely new board reviewing the project, staff's comments specifically address the mass and height in relation to those adjacent structures. So staff comments, number one, similar structures in this PUD development at the interior of the block to the south have been lowered a story, but these are closer to the public right-of-way of Columbus Street, and their height in relation to surrounding structures is more apparent. At 3.5 stories, the proposed structure does tend to loom over the immediate one-story dependency structures. However, the proposed structure will be located significantly further from the public right-of-way of Line Street to the north, making its height less apparent from this vantage point. 3, the proposed structure will be closer to Nassau Street than it is to Hanover Street, and the houses on Nassau Street are raised, full 2-story houses with steep roofs, which will help to screen the structure from the viewpoints along this right-of-way. The board has already approved 2 structures at this height, which bear the same relationship to Nassau Street. Staff finds that the additional distance from Line Street will mitigate the perceived height from the north, and since the board has already accepted this height in relation to Nassau Street, sees no reason why it's not acceptable here. Previous staff and board comments have been incorporated. On a specific note, the proposed windows are aluminum clad windows approved for other structures on this property. 6, the change from 2 single garage doors to a double door is appropriate for vehicular access and function on the site, and visibility of the doors is limited to Iron Forge Alley only. Other structures in the development include double garage doors. And last, and I think Mr. Jarrett did address this, stucco provided a more substantial base for the building. Applicant should explain this change and how and if it has been incorporated in other buildings on Iron Forge. It is atypical to place a trim board at this level with the same exposure of siding below and above it. And since it's further into your room, Luke, I know that I personally reviewed some of that, but I felt like it was on the night that we crossed paths or something and the item was withdrawn. And so I was just looking through and trying to get some confirmation that that's how that ground floor is treated on other buildings.
So, yes, that was a change that went into play partially. So we're going to have some of the buildings there with the masonry base, the stucco base, and some of the buildings. When you're coming into the alley, into the site, the buildings immediately to your left and your right, they have, that's 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and cladding extensions. And then the next ones farther back do not. They have the stucco base. So if the approval here is allowed with this one here, the development will have 2/3 stucco base and 1/3 cladding base, which is a little differentiation.
Okay, that makes sense. So the recommendation is conceptual approval, height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction.
Thank you. Any response?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, good. Board comments.
So on sheet A003. So in the bottom photo, are we looking from, that's from Hanover?
The bottom right photo?
Well, no, just this right here.
That photo, yeah, so that is on Hanover Street. It's a one-way private right-of-way through the site.
And I'm familiar. I've walked back in there, but but this is the height of the new structure also, right?
We are the same story height, but we are yes, those have parapets and it's the same amount of stories, correct? The height is generally the same at the absolute apex.
So I just wanted to point out that, because this is taken from a camera, so you're across the street on the sidewalk and you're taking a picture back. So that height is still visible from Hanover Street, and it may be, I don't know about Line Street. I can't really picture that from Line Street, but I thought that it was important to at least note that it is a tall building. And the 8202. Yes, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, 202, yes. But Luke, are the brackets underneath the balcony, are they structural or just for looks?
The ones down here along the bottom,
Yes.
those are aesthetic. Trying to minimize the amount of action happening above the garage bays.
I mean, and, so if that could all be within that framing assembly itself that the deck's sitting on, if those are just cantilevered out, if those are just decorative, I mean, maybe nobody else cares about it, but I would eliminate them if they aren't, if they're just for decoration and they're not structural.
This building doesn't have structural engineering before we get things, so if we need to make a decision like that, it's not a problem.
But this is just me. It's like, but the brackets, I think, draw too much attention to themselves, and if they're not necessary, I think it'd be.
Getting away from the garage door.
Right.
Okay, so they need it.
But, so 206. Oh, I'm sorry, Lawrence. Let's go back to that 202. That's just a nasty little flashing detail, right where that dormer ties into that ridge. But that's just a comment. 206.
You find, well, what I love about your comments is you saving the applicant trouble down the road.
So, so you're going to be 4 feet or so off the property line to the back of this house.
And I don't have a sheet, unfortunately, that describes. I don't have a dimension laid on top of that, James. I'm guesstimating visually.
You have not done the code search yet, right? You don't have to be fire rated on that side.
We are that wall. So
the windows are off, pretty much, if you are fire rated.
But if you have suite of between 3 and 5.
we are not within we are not close enough to the property line where we're precluded from having openings in our exterior.
So it's 3, 4, or 5 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is like a patio, like you said, patio.
Yeah.
Typical in Charleston.
Yeah, correct.
I just want to get a better handle on that. That's great. Thank you.
Further board comments?
On the same sheet, the single window in the dormers, what is happening there?
I think it's the same as going from 3 windows to 2 windows on the sides.
I don't know. That probably is not as visible as front facade, so it's just unusual to.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like normally a dormer is the window.
Dormer is, yeah.
That's right. You're right, Luke.
Further board comments? Hearing none, can I entertain a motion?
Staff and board comments.
Luda has moved for approval incorporating board and staff comments. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Wheeler seconds. Go down the roll. Ms. Brown?
Yea in favor.
Mr. Matters?
Yeah, you think.
Ms. Socha?
Yeah, in favor.
Ms. Wheeler?
Yeah, in favor.
And myself, yea in favor. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
We'll get it buttoned up.
Good evening.
Mr. Chair, before you get back to.
Yep.
This is the minutes from tonight. This is the minutes from this short meeting.
Isn't that great? Feels great. Nice cold beer.
Well,
Yeah.
You going to the game?
I got it.
Do you have a group that you congregate with when you go?
Me too. So as faculty and staff, we get complimented. 40 minutes as soon as they're available. Oh, isn't that the whole thing about this? So, I have a buddy that lives in Tampa. He has courtside seats. So either when he comes up, he asks me to go with him, or when he doesn't come up, I go.
Yeah, I had one
He's
on
in
my
town
desk, yeah.
tonight, so I'm gonna go with him.